You know that feeling, right? You pick up a classic, a book like Plato's Republic, and you can almost feel the weight of history. But what if I told you that history is way more complicated and honestly way more interesting than you think?
I mean, just think about this for a second. What if everything you've ever read from ancient Greece, Plato included, wasn't the original? What if it was a copy of a copy of a copy, passed down for centuries like a massive 2,000-year-old game of telephone?
Because here's the wild part. For a work as important as Plato's Republic, there is no original manuscript. Not one. Not a single page that Plato himself actually wrote has survived. So what we're left with is this incredible puzzle put together over centuries by some very dedicated intellectual detectives.
All right, so let's dive into how they do it. First, we'll look at the problem of Plato's lost original. Then, we'll see how these critics basically become detectives. After that, we'll try to unlock the book's blueprint, get to know Plato as an evolving philosopher, and finally, wrap it all up with why this puzzle is so important. So, let's start with that lost original and this whole game of telephone idea. You have to picture it. For centuries, the only way to preserve the Republic was for scribes to copy the entire thing by hand. And every single time a new copy was made, there was a chance for a little bit of human error to creep in. And what's so fascinating is just how, well, human these mistakes were. You know, a scribe gets tired and accidentally skips a line, or maybe even writes the same line twice. Or maybe they come across a really tough passage and just swap in a more familiar word for a rare one, changing the meaning ever so slightly. It wasn't on purpose. It's just what happens when a text passes through that many hands. The great 19th century scholars Jowett and Campbell summed it up perfectly. They said, the general meaning may be clear or probable, but the precise words are really irrecoverable. So what does that mean for us? It means we can definitely get the big picture, right? The main ideas are there. But the exact specific words that Plato chose? That's a lot trickier. And that's where the heroes of our story come in, the textual critics. Seriously, you should think of these people as literary detectives. They're sifting through mountains of evidence, all these different manuscripts, trying to piece together a lost masterpiece. And their number one tool has this kind of fancy name, conjectural emendation. All that really means is it's the art of fixing a mistake. It's proposing a change, an emendation, when the text you're looking at just doesn't make any sense and seems to be corrupted. Here's a perfect example from Shakespeare's Macbeth to show you how it works. A manuscript says, "My way of life is fallen into the sere, the yellow leaf." But a scholar suggested a tiny fix, "My May of life." Just one letter. But suddenly, the meaning goes from a path to a season. The poetry is completely transformed. It shows you how powerful this technique is, but also you can see how dangerous it could be if you get it wrong. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Fixing a text isn't like fixing a broken statue. With a statue, you can kind of see where the pieces should go, but words are slippery. They're flexible. They have all these shades of meaning. Language just has this incredible variety that makes a perfect one-to-one restoration almost impossible. So you have to understand, this isn't just people making wild guesses. No way. There's a strict process. First, you have to prove the text is actually broken. Second, you have to propose the absolute smallest change that could fix it. And third, and this is crucial, that change has to fit perfectly with what you know about Plato's writing style. It's a real discipline. Okay, so we've been talking about individual words and phrases. Let's zoom out now to an even bigger puzzle. These scholars don't just look at the small stuff, they question the whole structure of the Republic. Was this written as one single book, or is it more like a bunch of different pieces that got stitched together? Back in the 19th century, a scholar named Crone came along and basically threw a grenade into the discussion. He argued that the Republic wasn't created with one single grand plan. He saw it more like a building that had different rooms and wings added on over a long period of time. But, of course, a lot of scholars pushed back hard against that. They argue that the book is absolutely a unified whole. They point to these big, powerful ideas like the philosopher king or the soul's journey on a longer way. And they say, look, these are like golden threads that Plato wove through the entire thing from start to finish. It proves he had a master plan all along. Now, to solve these puzzles, both the tiny ones and the huge ones, our detectives have to look for clues outside the Republic itself. They have to compare it with Plato's other writings. They have to consider the fact that the philosopher himself changed over time. It's like Plato versus Plato. Because you gotta remember, Plato's thinking didn't just stay the same his whole life. Early on, in a work like the Gorgias, he's passionately arguing for justice as this powerful ideal. Then, in the Republic, he tries to design an entire perfect state based on that ideal. But then you look at one of his last works, The Laws, and he's proposing a more practical, second-best state, one that kind of admits that the real world is messy. It shows us a thinker who evolved, and that evolution can help us understand the different layers inside the Republic.
So this all leads us to the big finale, the puzzle that never ends. And, more importantly, why any of this detective work actually matters to us, right here, right now.
Let's go back to that original question. After all of this, when you sit down and open up Plato's Republic, what are you actually reading? Is it the pure, untouched thoughts of Plato? Or is it something else?
Well, the best answer we have is pretty profound. It's this. The unity of the Republic is not that of a syllogistic argument, but a unity which is created by the art of the writer. What that means is we aren't reading a perfect math proof. We are reading an incredible work of art. Its power comes from its artistic vision, a vision that's been painstakingly pieced back together, argued over, and polished by generations of these scholarly detectives. And maybe that's the most amazing takeaway. The greatest books, the ones that last, aren't just static objects that we read. They're living puzzles. They're constantly being re-examined and rediscovered. And every time we pick one up and engage with it, we become a part of that incredible ongoing story.